Can robots have feelings? Could you have feelings for a robot?
It's become a very big subcategory in robotics, has been ethics, roboethics, if you may, almost more of a philosophical question.
I've been deeply curious why anyone would build a robot that has no arms or legs.
With snake robots, it is using its body to actually push out and create friction against the sides.
This is like very Mission Impossible.
This is, and I say this in the most respectful manner possible, like this is crazy.
This is StarTalk. Neil deGrasse Tyson, your personal astrophysicist. I've got with me as my comedic co-host, Harrison Greenbaum. Harrison, welcome back.
Thank you. It's so nice to be back.
You were last here BC, before COVID.
Yes, before the pandemic. Absolutely.
Right, like 4 or 5 years ago. Just welcome back.
Thank
and you've been
you.
busy since you had a stint in Vegas.
I was in the hot deserts.
Whoa. So you've been getting around. It was like a residency in Vegas, right?
Yeah, I was the first comedian to headline a Cirque du Soleil show. And probably the last. I think they realized they're maybe not prepared for a clown with opinions.
Do you have to swing from the rafters?
I aggressively campaigned for my first entrance was through a lift in the floor, which is very cool. They give you like a safety training because they don't want you to get hurt in the lift.
Of course.
And this is a true thing. The two main companies that make it are Otis and Schindler. So I was like, let's not have a Jew killed by Schindler's lift. I don't want to be a part of that obituary. But for my second entrance in the show, I really wanted to come in Miley Cyrus style on a giant bagel.
Oh.
And I campaigned real hard for it. And it's a dream unrealized.
Still to come. To come.
Exactly.
All right. Excellent. So, you know what we're going to talk about today? We're going to talk about robotics.
Love it.
Nobody doesn't love robotics. So we combed the land.
Ooh.
Yes, we did. And we found Matthew Travers. Matthew, welcome to StarTalk.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you came in all the way from Pittsburgh.
That's correct.
That would be the home of Carnegie Mellon.
That is absolutely correct.
And they have one of the greatest robotics labs around.
Yeah, that's right. The home of the Robotics Institute.
Yeah, so it's not just a lab. Institutes.
The Institute. And then the next level is what? Society?
No, Institute, that's a good fundraising level for the title of what it is. So you would call yourself a roboticist.
That's
is
correct.
That correct?
Yep.
Okay. And I've got you here, senior systems scientist.
That's correct.
Carnegie
I've done
Mellon.
quite well for myself. Yeah.
Okay. Robotics Lab, Biorobotics Lab. That sounds a little scary.
Yeah.
And MATLAB. What is MATLAB?
The MATLAB is my lab, for lack of a better description.
Oh, MATLAB.
MATLAB.
Matthew Travers Lab.
That's correct.
Oh, no. No, I will not allow that.
No. So for the scientists
I
out
don't
there.
mean to brag, but we're currently in the Neil Institute.
Yeah. There's another MATLAB, not to be confused with the MATLAB.
Okay, I can't believe you went there. Okay. Gosh. But anyhow, we want to just get all into your stuff.
Please.
So, Matt, tell us, what do you think when someone says robot compared to what your average person on the street thinks? Because robot, it's got to have two arms, a head, and legs, and sound, and not sound exactly human, right? It's got to have a robot
C3PO.
voice. Okay. Yeah. For example, there's a gap there. Is one of your goals to close that gap between imagined robots and reality, or you just don't care? You'll make robots serve whatever the needs are of those who come knocking on your door.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. So, I mean, I think it's probably philosophical more than anything else.
Yeah, bring it on.
What's a robot? Right, like a coffee maker could be a robot.
I would call it a robot. It does a task that you wouldn't otherwise do or want to do, or
I would say
don't care about.
Yeah, it's arguably one of the most, by that definition, one of the most reliable robots at the Robotics Institute, without any question. Works day in, works day out, provides a service. But yeah, I mean, it's a daily activity, right? We work on robots of all different shapes and forms. And it's everything from, sort of more mechanical systems like you're talking about, things that are biomorphic, things that, look like humans, look like dogs, look like snakes, all the way down to us, what we consider, more on the intelligence side.
So what have you been working on lately?
A bunch of different things. So big program with NASA, I think we'll talk a little bit about. Mm-hmm. I've been working in recycling robots for quite some time, and I've been doing a bunch of work.
Wait.
Robots that recycle or recycling current robots?
Yeah. How many people are done with their robot?
Yeah,
Then you want to recycle?
Well, that coffee maker has been rebuilt so many times, it just wants to end it.
No. So these would be robots that know how to sort recycling materials.
Yep. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so that's a mechanical thing with some AI built in, right?
That's
so
absolutely
it's got to be a whole AI dimension of what you're doing.
Yes. There's a lot of interest in the robotics community in AI right now, sort of like overnight.
Right. So let's unpack this a bit. Obviously, the coffee maker is not making decisions for you.
Well, it's grinding the beans, right?
No, but you told it to grind the beans.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
not otherwise. It's doing tasks for you, but it's not deciding for you. It's not looking at you get out of bed and say, we need a triple
That would be
espresso
cool,
this
though.
morning. If you
be
pop
sweet.
up wide-eyed, and then it gives you a single espresso. So where is the frontier now? Because it seems to me we're capable of building anything mechanical. Mechanical is just some engineers in a room for a day. It's this decision-making that seems to me the big frontier here.
Yeah, related to the question of what actually makes a robot. So for me, when we get down to it, actually combining the mechanical with some form of intelligence and some decision making and some ability to sense the world so that you can get feedback.
By the way, we had as a guest on StarTalk, you can dig it up in the archives, the actor who played C-3PO.
Awesome.
Yes. So at the time he had written his biography, and in there what he said was he's the only person in the world who knows what it's like firsthand to be a robot. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, I'd be standing there, and if people chose to ignore me, there's no social cost to that because he's just a robot. Whereas if you were an actual human being, you'd feel some obligation to fold them into a conversation. And so I don't know if this gets to the point of, can robots have feelings? Could you have feelings for a robot? Does that matter? Are there psychologists working in your mat lab
They're all
It's
named
catchy.
Matt.
that could guide your morality and your ethics when you invent one of these things?
It's become a very big subcategory in robotics, has been ethics, roboethics, if you may. And it's an interesting question. Certainly, you'll talk to people who work with like bomb disposal robots, or people you're starting to see more like dog-like robots, police bomb squads, and like will have them. And they start to really develop personal relationships.
So part of it is probably because people will name the robot.
Yeah.
And the moment you name it, like don't name the animal you're going to slaughter for your dinner, because that affects you emotionally.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think the emotions that they might be feeling, it becomes part of your team, right? So people do study psychology of teaming and that. And so starting to extend some of that to now incorporate robots on those teams. And the sense of codependency, especially in these jobs that are life critical, for lack of a better description, when you start to depend on something and you have a form a relationship with
It
it.
becomes part of your life as well. Yeah.
Correct.
Wow. Okay, so the future robots should have caution page about.
Getting too
Most
close.
likely. Yeah.
And stop there, because there's no.
My car was named Rebecca. I'll just leave it at that.
I won't ask you what you did with Rebecca. So I have a question, and this has bothered me is not quite the right word, but it is the right word.
Okay.
It is. I've been deeply curious why anyone would build a robot that resembles any life form at all. Just build a robot that is exactly shaped for your task. And that should not have to be something that looks like another life form.
Yeah, you're correct.
Let's build a bomb-sniffing dog. No, just because dogs have good sense of smell doesn't mean you have to build a robot that looks like a dog. Build a robot that is for the task.
Yeah, I mean, people do definitely build platforms that are specialized for tasks, but it comes down to almost more of a philosophical question.
Doesn't it have to be true that a specially designed robot will do its task better than a generally designed robot would?
It doesn't have to be the
Speaking
case,
as an
but it often is.
engineer, that kind of has to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, what you typically find, one example from, stuff that we work on in MATLAB is, we design robots that can go up and down stairs. So you can design a robot that's really good at going up and down stairs, but, that action is at the beginning and the end of the stairs, right? So like if I design a robot that's only good for that one portion of the task, of course, I'm going to, have a robot that's really good at going up and down stairs, but going and exploring a floor after it climbs the stairs might be an issue. So there's always going to be a trade-off.
So how many legs does this robot have that goes up steps?
We use quadrupeds. Stairs were made for legs. Trust me when I say that.
Legs, but made for 4 legs, not 2 legs.
Legs in general.
I used to walk dogs, and dogs had
I've seen some footage of past presidents. Having legs is not necessarily all you need to go up and down stairs.
Yeah. So I used to walk dogs like for a living, and dogs are completely fluent on stairs. Okay, provided they're not bred as city dogs. Mm-hmm. City dogs don't know stairs, but any other dog, it'll just roll, and they're perfectly fine, mm-hmm. and they're pretty good on horizontal ground too.
I don't think I want a robot dog walker that looks like a dog. Just a robot dog holding other dogs.
I'm strangely all right with it, to be honest with you.
No, you need the arms to hold the leash. So you'd have to design a dog with 6 legs.
Oh, God.
They can do it.
You can do it.
Why can't they do it?
Hexapods, more legs.
Oh, what's it called?
Hexapods.
Hexapods.
That makes sense.
Okay. All right.
What's the most legs you put on a robot?
6 personally.
Okay.
The way you said it makes it sound like you want to do more.
Yeah, he sounds like he's still aspiring. But doesn't 6
octopods?
Doesn't 6 legs maximize a certain efficiency of locomotion because any 3 points that are not in a line creates a stable foundation? So a stool is like the minimum thing you can sit on.
Yep.
If it had 2 legs, you can't sit on it. Okay? You give it a 3rd leg that's not in line with the other 2, that's stable.
The reason you don't sit on a person.
Duh.
They have 2 legs.
Oh, I see. Okay. So 3 legs is stable, the minimum stable number of points. If you have 6 legs, at any given moment, 3 legs can be raised and moved forward while the other 3 legs give it stability. Those other 3 legs go down, and then it swaps 3 legs for 3 legs.
Yep.
Keeping in mind that when we lift up 1 leg, you're not stable. You have to land once you've lifted it up.
Right.
All right? Otherwise, you'll tip over unless you're a ballet dancer, and you don't, I'm not thinking you're a ballet dancer. So,
wait, what are you trying to say?
As we continue to push the boundaries of space exploration, our understanding of the universe is simultaneously being shaped by past missions. NASA's Cassini spacecraft, which famously concluded its mission with a dramatic plunge into Saturn, is still enlightening us years later with their latest radar revelations showing the seas of Saturn's moon Titan behaving similarly to Earth's despite differing compositions. Ground News found over 30 articles covering this, allowing you to either compare coverage for more perspective or sort by high factuality to instantly find the most reliable reporting, like the study itself. What's really interesting is you can even click on Nature to find out what topics they cover most, as well as recent stories they've released studies on, ensuring you're fully informed on the latest scientific developments. Considering mainstream media rarely reports on such advancements, being able to easily find these types of stories and their research is really important. That's why Ground News does more than gather the world's news in one place. They also highlight blind spots in reporting, surfacing important coverage that might otherwise be ignored. Whether it's topics related to space or society, our sponsors and their former NASA engineer of a CEO, do a fantastic job at helping us see beyond our echo chambers and information silos. This is why we can't recommend Ground News enough for anyone looking for a more comprehensive and informed outlet for their news. Go to ground.news/StarTalk or scan the QR code to save 40% on the same Vantage plan we use for unlimited access to all their features. Let's get back to the show.
So do people think about the stability of what legs are still touching the ground versus which others can move forward? I think that's how beetles can scurry so efficiently. Their legs do this thing.
Yeah, so it's called an alternating tripod gate, as you might imagine.
We got a term for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alternating tripod gate?
That's correct.
Didn't know that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's what I'll say next time instead of spending 5 minutes explaining it. Okay.
I was going to cut in, but I didn't want to be rude.
Oh, no! Be rude. Be
I was
rude.
gonna call it the Matt game, but they said that might be too much.
But you're correct. It might not be the most efficient, maybe the most effective in terms of maintaining static stability. So with humans, right, sort of the main difference between what you're talking about with hexapods and humans is we actually have a dynamic stability, which is sort of a different
The way a
beast.
bicycle has a dynamic stability.
That's exactly correct.
Right.
If you don't pump energy into the mode of going forward, you're going to fall over.
Right. Interesting.
But on the flip side, as I think a famous robotist once said, "Mo legs, mo problems."
I think it might have been me.
Is that a problem where, like, if you have too many legs? Because I feel like you have to know where each leg is going to be at all times.
The
and more
millipede
legs,
didn't
the
seem
more...
to have an issue with this, okay? So,
Yeah. It's an interesting question. So when we start to get into robots with even more degrees of freedom, for each of those legs as a roboticist, right?
so tell me about degrees of freedom.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me.
sure.
So degree of freedom is like in your elbow joint or any of your joints is a degree of freedom.
So this is a degree of freedom.
Yes.
But maybe this is as well. But now I'm using my
There's one degree of
shoulder.
freedom. Yeah,
So I need 2 different joints to execute
that's
this.
correct.
Okay.
Typically one joint, so like a simple hinge joint, you can get 1 degree of freedom.
Got it. But the rotation, I guess that's also, so now I'm moving but not moving to a new place.
Yep.
So is rotation a degree of freedom to you?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yep, rotational and translational.
Translational. All right, good.
Yeah, so as you start to add more and more degrees of freedom, you need to start to be a little bit sophisticated in how you are going to coordinate those, right? I mean, just, I have lots of degrees of freedom in my body, but I'm able to coherently put those into forward motion, to walk, to jump, to climb stairs.
You're not a badly connected skeleton trying to walk down the street.
That's correct.
No skeleton has ever had swagger. They're always like ready to crumble into a pile of bones. Yeah. So as you boost the degrees of freedom, it comes with higher responsibility. It requires more control.
Yeah, you can articulate more. So the overall number of, lack of better description, degrees of freedom that you have, and the expressiveness that you can get out of more degrees of freedom, the number of places that I can weave into and whatever, add capability does go up. But it comes at the cost that it becomes more complicated to coordinate all of those degrees of freedom. For me,
Into some coherent project or task.
that's correct.
All right.
Does that mean when we, like the robot dance is this? So like as robotics get better, do we need to change this dance? Is this offensive?
More degrees of
to
freedom.
other robots?
Robot said, hey, I'm way more fluid than that.
Yeah, this is like 1 or 2 joints.
No, I showed the robot dance because that was my day. Okay. Okay. I showed it to my
Nice.
kids. I said,
Still
what
got
is
it.
that? And I said, it's the robot dance. And they said, we've never seen a robot do that. Because all the robots are fluid, right? So it's a very
Kids.
throwback. Yeah, it's a throwback robot.
Even
all
the
right?
coffee maker is offended. Like, I'm so sorry, but that's
Well, I got more moves than
disrespectful.
that.
It's like, dude, loosen up, you know? So I got into a little dust up on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert because we had both seen Dune. We went to the world premiere. And I didn't hang out with him there, but we saw each other. And I was on his show shortly after that. He said, what'd you think of Dune? Because he loves these big fantasy stories, right? He's a big fan of Lord of the Rings. So what'd you think? And I said, well, the worm, okay. But there's a scene where the worm moves really fast. And it is straight as it does that. The worm has no legs or arms or wings, so you can't take a straight thing and just zoom down the highway, okay? If you ever see a snake, it has to coil and then propel itself off of that. If you ever see a stretched out snake, it is harmless to you, okay? It can't just all of a sudden bite you or chase you down. That's not gonna happen, okay?
Straight things are slow. That's why the gay pride parade is so much quicker. It's so fast.
Nailed it.
So what good would a robot be that has no arms or legs? Because I'm reading up that you're collaborating with NASA on this EEL project. Because Okay, this sounds like a tortured acronym. Let's see what they pulled out of this. Exobiology Extant Life Surveyor. Did I get that right?
EELS.
EELS.
That's correct.
Okay, so this is, it's a robot.
It's a robot.
That you're in design right now, presumably, right? When will it be ready and deployed?
I believe 2028 is target.
In just a few years to come.
That's correct.
And what is its prime directive?
The scientists at NASA believe that the greatest probability to find other biological life in our solar system is on one of the moons of Saturn, Enceladus.
Okay.
It's the name of the moon. It's a ice-covered planet, and you can see, so they've sent previous missions
In this context, he's allowed to call the moon a planet.
Okay.
Because it's a world. Okay, it's a spherical world, and I'm giving him that. Okay, but don't come at me and say, "But how about Pluto?" No, we ain't going there. Okay, go.
Whew, my bad.
Yeah.
All right. So previous missions have found these geysers, plumes of whatever material coming up from the surface.
Coming from below the surface through the ice.
Correct.
Because there's pressure down there, and then if you have pressure and some fluid, something's got to give.
Yeah.
I'm keeping it so clean. I'm keeping it so clean right now.
Thank you.
Shackled to the chair.
So they believe, that that pressure is being created by subsurface ocean. And they believe that, the scientists at NASA believe that that has the highest probability for finding life.
Now, if you have geysers, you don't have to go to the ocean because it's coming to you. How does that
help
or hinder your efforts?
Yeah, that's one of the theories, that you could fly through the plumes as they're happening to try to collect data there. There's other thoughts that you can just go to the surface and start taking samples there.
Because the geyser comes back down, and it does.
And it's water?
Yeah. Well, excuse me. We don't know. And so liquid.
It's very likely water.
Yeah.
Very likely. Yeah.
So there's a couple different theories on what would be the best way to go search for life there, which is ultimately what they're trying to do. With the EELS Project, we are actually trying to get into the ocean via the sinkholes.
Oh, do we know?
Have you considered knocking?
So that means we have some idea how big the opening is. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Sort of. I believe the resolution of surface, any pictures that we have of the surface of Enceladus are about 6 meters per pixel. So I believe that the openings into whatever the sinkholes, we think they can see them.
Okay.
But not with great enough resolution that I think you could measure down to meters.
All right. So it's got to be worm-like to get in the hole.
Yeah.
And then what does it do?
So this project, basically, we're trying to, in the same way, so like a boa constrictor, actually exactly the same way, can constrict around something with snake robots, which is the EELS robot is basically a snake robot.
It doesn't look like an eel?
Good one.
Wait,
He needs a new name.
wait a second. The eel robot is designed to look like a snake?
look a lot alike.
They look alike, but they're not the same.
Harrison uncovered the flaw in your project. Okay.
This is unbelievable.
Snake-like robot tried to climb down the geyser by pushing out against the sides of it. So we're not going to drop a robot basically down the geyser. So we want to do a controlled descent by pushing out.
Yeah, this is like very, Mission Impossible kind of.
Very much.
Yes. Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
So you have things that protrude from the side of your eel.
It is using its body, the body of the robot, to actually push out and create friction against the sides of the sinkholes.
So does it do it in a curvy sort of way? So it can span whatever the width is?
That's absolutely
just by
correct.
curving to do that?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Now you design it to get in, but now you want to do interesting things. How's the eel going to do that?
So that's where I think the eel comes in, is it actually, we want to be able to get down through hole and then swim in ocean and take samples and search for life.
So where are the sensors?
So right now the sensors are in the head and in all of the individual degrees of freedom. So the degrees of freedom in this case all have motors attached to them as well, so you can control them.
Okay. And does it have to come back out and...
Excellent question. So as of yet, so once you collect the information, which you have to do physically, collect the samples, getting the information back out, you can do wirelessly. Right? If you have something flying over, you have line of sight.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So whatever it's doing, it's information in situ, and then it sends that information back about whatever it collected.
It's one way to do it. So as of yet, undecided, I think, for that program.
Okay.
So you're leaving that poor eel? And we're talking about personalizing. Don't name this thing. Don't name it. You're going to feel real bad abandoning it on Saturn's moon.
I don't think anybody has feelings for eels. I'm sorry
That's
about that. Is it furry? Doesn't have big eyes?
Yeah,
no,
that's
we're
true.
not. So this is not designed for a sample return then. It's going to get all the samples it can.
Yeah, I don't think the answer to that question yet exists.
So you made quick mention of the constricting part of a boa constrictor. In what way is your eel constricting?
So it's doing the opposite, or like the complement of constricting. It's actually pushing out.
Oh, okay. So it's the same dynamic, I guess, just in the opposite.
That's exactly correct.
Interesting.
So you're using forces instead of like a normal robot. You think of in a factory where it's doing pick and place type actions, and, very robotic and mechanical. In this case, it's more biological in the sense that it's trying to engage with the environment. It's trying to actually feel its way proprioceptively. In this case, feel its way through the environment.
So Saturn is an hour and a half away, light travel time. So no one is giving it fast commands. Look out for the monster. It's too late.
Yeah.
The subsurface monster. So it's got to have some decision-making abilities. What might that include?
100%. So
He's
yeah.
just looking outside the hole. I'm not going in there. What, you out of your mind?
That looks dangerous. You go first.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
this is. Oh boy.
So we just had actually a paper in Science Robotics that just very recently came out that actually...
Wait, that's a journal.
That's a journal. That's correct.
Science Robotics.
That's correct. Yep.
Wow.
So that article goes into in great detail exactly what the autonomy system is. But in general, very, very high level, you have sensors, you have your platform, which can move around, interact with the environment. You have some sensors on it so that you can sense the environment. Is there a rock over there? Is there a crevasse over there?
Right. What good is a robot if it can't sense its own environment?
That's
Yeah.
correct. So yeah, sensors, mobility platform, and then basically decision making at the high level. So we can take in the sensor measurements and be like, all right, there's a big hole over there. Maybe I want to explore the hole. Maybe I don't. Maybe that looks dangerous. So you have a planning algorithms, what we would call it, which is making decisions. And then something that's doing the control, which is making sure that your robot is actually doing what you're trying to get it to do.
And again, because of this, it's an hour and a half there and an hour and a half back. You don't even know if it did anything you wanted for 3 hours, a 3-hour delay.
correct.
So
In that way, Saturn is closer than Pittsburgh.
So depends how you measure, but yeah.
he drove in from Pittsburgh earlier today. So,
And that was like 2 Saturns.
And back.
up till now, you have not described what this thing is made out of. Is it just hunks of metal that you guys welded together? Is it what?
Iron Man style?
Iron Man
In
style.
a cave under duress?
Yeah, in your garage. I cannot begin to think what you would make this out of.
Basically, it's a bunch of metal and motors and sensors that are put together, perhaps welded in some cases. But mostly aluminum, steel, normal, that.
And how long is it? How big is it?
It's about 2.5-ish meters is the
Meters?
first prototype. Yeah, so it's
What if a
pretty
lady is asking
big.
5 meters?
That's right. Yeah, and it weighs, I think, around 200 kilograms, so like around 400 pounds.
Okay. On Earth.
Correct.
On Enceladus, it weighs practically nothing.
You probably know better than me.
Yeah. Okay. And when I think of a millipede, it's in these little segments, and each segment has legs. So because it has so many segments, it can turn in any way that it wants.
Mm-hmm.
So can I presume that since this is snake-like, eel-like, it has segments that can simulate the wiggliness of a eel?
Yep.
How many segments is this made of? Approximately.
Let's say 8 segments.
Only 8.
8 segments-ish. Don't exactly quote me on that. But there's 2 forms of actuation, primary forms of actuation on the platform. So it can bend its body, and then it has counter-rotating screws that can actually produce forward locomotion, even if the body of the robot is straight. It can actually drive itself forward.
So these are like an Archimedean screw, so that you can move it forward or backwards.
That's correct.
Right. Archimedean screw has a surface. It's what hole diggers are, where it's like a corkscrew, but it's got a surface so that as it turns, the dirt rides up the screw, and you can actually empty out the hole of what's there. But if that's on a surface and you turn it, yeah, it'll propel it forward for sure.
Yep.
And counter-rotating so that it can go forwards or backwards.
Counter-rotating, so basically it doesn't just spin in place. You need something to have the opposing force.
Oh, so one of them is touching the outer surface and the other one is inside, not touching anything.
No. Sorry. There are two counter-rotating screws on the outside of the body of the robot. One of them is basically gripping while the other is pulling. So they're both, like, if you just had a screw on the front of it, the body of the robot would start to rotate.
The opposite of that.
Rotate. So the screw, the body of the robot doesn't rotate. The screws are handling that additional torsional force.
Okay. So that can only be true if the two screws have opposite threading.
That's exactly correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was about to say that also. I was thinking about it, and I was going to say it. I'm going to let Neil say it. It's his thing, but that was what I was
He
going
did
to say.
sound smart.
No, I had to like, figure that out in real time.
If you look at a picture of it, you can see it exactly
Okay.
for what it's worth.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So the two screws rotating opposite directions
Correct.
both propel it forward.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
And thank you. Okay.
I'm here to help.
And are there a lot of redundancies in the robot? Like, because it's going to take a lot of time and energy to get it to Saturn. Do you have things like in case things go wrong?
You know what we used to do? Because it was so much to design something from scratch, we built two identical ones, and we'd send one and we leave the other one behind so that we had a model for what, in case something went wrong, we could mess with it. Or if we had enough confidence in that, we just launched the second one. That's what Voyager 1 and 2 are identical spacecraft. They're identical. We said, we got another one. We're done with it. Let's send it off. Send it off.
So, yeah, part of the going to this eel or snake-like design is you have multiple degrees of freedom that are all working together to produce one desired outcome. So if you have like a motor, right, you have 10, 8, 16, whatever motors in the robot. If one of those motors goes down, you now have 15 other motors. So you're not just completely dead in the water.
You meant literally dead in the water.
You're literally
Right.
Well, if you made it down, if you actually made it down to the crevasse.
Just expression.
Yeah. But in this case, then you also have the screws, the counter-rotating screws. So those are your two main propulsion. You can either undulate with the body or use the screws for propulsion. So you actually have redundant locomotive methods.
So you're doing robotics in collaboration with NASA, which has my people, astrophysicists. So first, how are we to work with? Are we?
Just absolute pleasure.
What
Pleasure to be here, Neil.
I know.
It's been a nightmare. I know. They made us call it eel, but it's actually a snake.
NASA's calling me like on the way out of this office.
So do they come to you or do you go to them?
It's an interesting question. So one of the primary tech leads on this project is actually one of my former graduate students who actually worked on snake-like robots at Carnegie Mellon. So he, I believe, was sort of the driving force for my inclusion in this project.
So is this a fully funded project? It's will fly, is that right? Or there's some contingencies here?
I think it's too early to tell.
All right, have you named your eel yet?
To the best of my understanding, there's no name for the eel yet, but I could
Neil the eel?
Neil the eel.
Neil the eel, thank you.
Neil the eel actually works.
Neil the eel.
You
Okay.
have to come up with one more letter. It's very easy.
So my understanding of engineers is you guys love constraints. No, because that forces you to be creative in ways that wouldn't otherwise be required of you. So in NASA, there's the payload, the weight of the payload, the temperature constraints, the shake and bake constraints because it's hot, it's shaky, it's cold. So you get all of these specs, and then you just go into, lock yourselves in a room and come out with something at the end.
Robot. That'll be all, folks.
That's my stereotype. To us, you're kind of like a black box. Yeah. It's like, just here are the specs, just do it, all right? And then great creativity comes of this. For example, we wanted to put telescopes in space that were bigger than the rockets that could launch them. And we said, engineers, figure out how to do this. They said, let's create a segmented mirror that unfurls when it gets into space. We couldn't have come up with that. You guys come up with this, right? So we're very happy about this kind of relationship. How has it worked in practice between you and the astro folk? Do they hand you specs and you come back and it iterates?
Yeah, I mean, they're like, here's a crevasse on a one of Saturn's moons. We're going to put a autonomous robot down. We're going to climb down the thing and go take samples from the sea. So like as an engineer, you're like, yeah, this is awesome. Right. Like this is, and I say this in the most respectful manner possible. Like this is crazy. Yeah. Like it's crazy.
It's dope.
Yeah, it is. But like for me as an engineer, I like challenges. And
That's
this
what
is
I'm
a
saying.
challenge.
Constraints are the challenge.
You're
That's
correct.
what a constraint
Absolutely.
is.
It's a big problem. It's a hard problem. And that I find that cool.
All right. So let me bring some closure here. When I reflect on portrayals of robots, mostly through cinema and other forms of storytelling, they always make them look human. And I remembered thinking early how unimaginative that is. Because if you have tasks to perform, the human body might not be the best designed for it. Even in the Jetsons, he had to fly his own car without realizing that maybe the car itself could be a robot. So this is very limited thinking for all of us, going back even just a few decades. Now, that's been blown wide open. And we have no end of tasks that robots can and should perform for many reasons. For safety, for just dignity, for things that a human being, we just rather not do. So you let a robot do it. And I foresee that transition coming faster and faster, because now it's not just the skeletal mechanical object that's doing a simple task. It's actually going to be imbued with some form of intellect, decision-making power. Yeah, I'm good with that, but we need a tandem review of the ethics of what you just created, and possibly even its morality for what task you would have it do, violating one or two of Isaac Asimov's laws in a robot that you design that brings harm to other people. So, cautionary tale, but a beautiful one, knowing that if we do it right, it's as bright a future as anyone has ever imagined. That's a cosmic perspective. Matt Lab, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
So thanks for coming in for this.
Pleasure.
Right
Thank you for
here in
having
my
me.
office at the
Of course.
American Museum of Natural History,
Yeah, been a
Hayden
pleasure.
Planetarium. And Harrison, we can find you off Broadway.
Off Broadway, yeah.
Okay, call me when you're on Broadway.
Yeah.
No, what's your show called?
It's called Harrison Greenbaum, What Just Happened. You can go to harrisongreenbaum.com, get all the info on touring and all that good stuff.
Excellent. We'll look for you. Okay, this has been yet another episode of StarTalk. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, as always, bidding you to keep looking up.